All right, what do I want to say? Now that I'm back, I want to get back into things. I have 2 piles that have accumulated while I've been busy, and we're going to go out and pick a pile and then get back into stuff. So I've got these bike parts. These things came in while I was busy with other stuff, and that's got brakes and electric power supplies and batteries and all of that stuff. And I've got the old bike parts and a pile of steel ready to go weld the very first prototype together just to see if we like the basic ideas. To do that, we need the welder. That's over there, and we'll take and open those boxes and assemble the welder and get that ready to go and make sure it works. Once we know it works, then we're going to work on getting a welding table and a place to do our welding. All right, so this is a pile of welding stuff. Let's see, what do we get? Got a bunch of stuff because I didn't have any welding equipment before we started this, and a few things about it. One is I've been around welding a lot, and I welded as a kid, but I haven't welded recently, so I know you need stuff. You need gloves, just work gloves, other gloves so I can have people help me should that happen. I grabbed a welding shirt because I have had a sunburn from welding before, so that should help out. And a few little brushes and chipping hammers and stuff. The welding I'm going to be doing shouldn't require much chipping hammer, but I figured while I was at it I'd do it. And then we have these things. So I think what we're going to need is a box knife to open this up. Now, the nice thing about starting fresh with the different equipment for something different is you get to kind of pick what you want. And this is one type of welding helmet, which I've not seen before, used before. I have to sort out how it works. But these are a pair of helmets, one for me and one for anybody who shows up who wants to see what's up here. This guy is, of course, a self-darkening, etc., helmet. So the last time I welded, these didn't exist. Now they're pretty common. So I got this one, and I grabbed this one. Now I've got 2 different ones so I could try them out and just see which one I liked better. I tried to get ones that had multiple sensors, so it would always be assured of darkening, ones that had a larger than expected screen, so it's not just the narrow size, but these things, I think they were like 3.5 by 4 inches. Something like that. So anyhow, there are a couple of different helmets. They're not the fanciest helmets. They're actually pretty inexpensive. Let's see, this is 4 by 3 inches. Exactly. And we're going to try those out. So those are the little accessories, but what we really have here is the welder itself. So that would be this box. Open this box, and I suppose as we get into this, we'll see what all we got. Time to roll up the sleeves. In this box is a set of instructions. So this thing is from AHP Welds. When I looked for welding equipment, I couldn't decide really. Did I want the most simple TIG, $300, or did I want a very fancy TIG welding unit? I did want to do TIG so I could weld varieties of materials and kind of play with the technology. I've done in the past a little bit of gas welding, a little bit of brazing, really in the past, when I was a kid and lived on a farm. MIG welding, I did a lot of MIG welding in industrial settings. I wasn't the welding guy. I worked with a bunch of welding guys, welding engineers from the Ohio State University, and they were all really good at what they did. That was back in the day. I suspect it's still true. But anyhow, we did some TIG in industrial. And my side of the world all involved robots and MIG welding equipment. And then since I've done a little bit of MIG welding by hand. But I did want to use TIG, and so my box now has in it another box. We'll skip that. Let's go to the main thing. This is a TIG welder, and in the I didn't know did I want a $300 welder or a $3,000 welder. I went somewhere in the middle, and I found this AHP Welds TIG welding unit. Order of magnitude $800. I bought it directly from them. They were really good. They were back ordered at the time I decided I wanted it. It came not too long after. Appeared in my garage because I was on a break. Didn't matter. It sat around for a little bit. And now it's here, but it had positive ground, negative ground, AC, DC, a little bit of set on post flow. I think it has a high frequency start and some other stuff. So it should do the range of TIG welding without being very expensive, high performance, lots of capability, industrial equipment, but certainly a lot more capability than the most basic. And a welder. Excellent. Ta-da. So this thing seemed to have the right feature set at the right price. And if you want to look right here, has standard size cable connections, the gas connection through the welder, and then kind of a simple control panel. It doesn't have, as nearly as I can tell, I don't think it has much storage, etc., but kind of a basic, better than average hobbyist unit, but certainly not an industrial unit. But for everything we're going to do with the bridge bike, and for making a welding table and all that stuff, should be fine. It'll be a lot of fun to play with TIG welding, having played with MIG welding in the past. And I want to try and get this tape off the bottom. So, that's the welder. I'm going to move this thing aside for a second, and then we're going to go for the box that was in the box and see what we've got. So this box in the box is supposed to be all of the cables and supplies I need except the tungsten electrodes and cups and the collets and all of that. All right, let's start here. See what we have. So we have a pedal. This controls the amperage, I guess, amperage setting on the TIG. A gas hose to go to the gas bottle. I separately went to a welding supply and got a gas bottle, which means that this must be a regulator for argon. Most TIG is pure argon, and there's a regulator. Oh, much nicer regulator than I thought. I thought this was going to be a 2 rotary dial, but no, it's a weighted ball regulator. So tank pressure, flow volume, it's calibrated from 10 cubic feet per hour, I think. Is that range up to 60 cubic feet an hour? I think in TIG welding, the guy at the gas supply house said you typically run 15 to 20. I think it depends where you are. If you're outdoors, you run a lot more. If you're indoors, you can run less. You really just have to have enough shielding gas to keep the tungsten and the hot puddle from corroding in the atmosphere. So that goes with that. Power control, there's a cable so it can run at either 110 or the welder itself comes with a 220 plug. In my garage, I'm my power suspect, so I'll just run this off in a generator so I can drag it around with me. We have a stick welding holder, and I don't think I'll ever use that, but it comes with a welder. Ground clamp, again, these are supposed to be standard size connectors so that you can get other parts later if you want to change torches and whatnot. And then we get to torch stuff. This looks like, this is a instead of using the foot pedal, this would be an on-off switch to hold at the torch to do it. I think I'm inclined to use the foot pedal, but if you wanted, that would be an option to use on the torch. And differently than I thought, the torch comes with widgets. So that's pretty good. And then here's the TIG welding torch. So one end plugs in to the welder. There's a gas connection for the welder. And there's the TIG torch without any of the stuff in it. It's a flexible torch and then comes with the accessories. I don't remember seeing that advertised with it, but it's got a bunch of holders. It doesn't have any tungsten, but it has holders and collets and gas containing cups. And then I have this other box of torch accessories. Did not come with the welder. It was not expensive. So these are other torch parts. So these torch parts include different kinds of gas cups. So these are ceramic gas cups. There are these are quartz gas cups inside, and then a whole collection of different size tungsten parts, etc. I also separately got tungsten electrodes. I have some different forms of tungsten. There's some thoriated tungsten. There's some, I think these are just straight tungsten. And I have some pre-cut tungsten. It's a little tiny box, but anyhow, I have some pre-cut, pre-sharpened tungsten elements to go in there. That'll help me start out. And I know that when you sharpen tungsten, you want to sharpen it on a grinder that is only for your tungsten. You want maybe a 20-30 degree angle on the end. If you're grinding it with something that you've used on steel or stainless, etc., that contaminates the tungsten and contaminate your welds, and they're going to tend to crack. Initially, when I'm starting to do this, I expect a lot of not good welds, but eventually I expect some pretty decent welds. Take a little practice is all. So I'm going to take a second and move cameras closer so that we can have a closer look at all of the little widgety stuff in this bag, and we'll assemble a torch. I want to put all these parts in this little box. Drop those in there. Collets. Don't know sizes. I think they're called gas lenses. Huh. These are different than expected. I thought this was a type 17. It's a 17F. Okay, this is the stuff that came with the welder here, except for these pre-sharpened tungsten tips. And that pile over there is the stuff that came separately. I bought those separately. So this came with the welder, and so I'm going to start with what the welder came with. It came with only one collet and multiple things, and I'm going to take a pretty good guess how to assemble it. There are 3 different sizes. There's a 2.4 millimeter, I presume, a 1.6 millimeter, I presume, and a 1.6 millimeter. I think I can read that. So let's take that, because I think that's going to be 1/16 of an inch, and just have a quick check and see if the tungsten fits in there. Feels good. And now how to assemble this? I think I take this and put it in with a collet. And that gets shoved in there tight. And then I think I can take either the little stop or the big stop, and I'll just, out of habit, I think, put the big one in, and screw that in, and finger tight locks it. Exactly. Assembled. And this says 6 millimeters, presumably. It says 5. And this one says 7. Well, just for the fun of it. Huh. How does that attach? I don't know. All right, doing it again. So, think the tungsten goes in here, goes in the collet. That screws in tight, finger tight. This screws on there, finger tight to just make a little seal, and then this goes on to lock it. And the only tricky bit is I don't have any tungsten sticking out the end. That seems like a lot of tungsten, but let's just go with it for the moment. I'm guessing that if my diameter there is 7, I want to be sticking out something just shy of 7. And finger tighten. And now I think I have a torch assembled enough to try it out. So from here, I'm going to go to another bench so I don't mind burning it, because that's kind of a nice top still to be frying with a piece of welding equipment. So first things first. So I have a temporary piece of rope holding that on, clamped onto the shelving, and I'm going to hook this in. Once that steel cap comes off, these things really need to be tied on somewhere, and so this one is. That's good. And so here's the cable to the welder. Try not to cross thread it. That should be fine. And got it? Nice. And the one thing I don't know is, for steel, negative ground or not. Okay, work polarity is positive. All right, so this is the ground clamp. Ground is sort of silly in the context of this because it's actually positive. Here's the torch. So let me stretch the torch out. Being very careful not to knock that on the ground. Like that. Okay, that's on. Here's the foot pedal. So this is foot. All right. Positive ground clamp there. Big torch there. I think everything's ready to set up the welder. Start by slowly opening this valve. Just don't want to shock all the parts. And now, open it all the way. Says we have 2,000 pounds of argon there. And I don't know what it takes to bleed this. I think I have to give it power. So let's give it power. So that's the generator. We'll plug it in, turn it on, fire it up. go over and turn the welder on. Foot. And now up here. Lovely. Oh, welding, clean metal. It's turned off just for quiet because we're using the generator here, but DC, I'm just going through all of the things. TIG, DC, 2T because we're going to use the foot pedal, and no pulse on. Foot pedal start amps, I don't know. Let's just pick something in the 80 range. Main amps, let's pick something in that same kind of range. End amps, we can pick something in the same range. We're not using pulse, so pulse doesn't count, pulse doesn't count, pulse doesn't count. AC frequency, don't know how that does anything. AC balance, I think we're not using AC at all, so neither of those count. And then post flow, so that sets something for the gas. So now when I start it up and I turn the main power on, we should be able to TIG weld. The next thing is to make sure that the helmet fits and turns on. Since the last time I had a welding helmet, that's really soft plastic. It used to be like fiberglass and stuff, but I think they were nowhere near this good. Anyway, shade. Set it to high shade, low sensitivity, delay, go fast. And we're going to put some welding gloves on. And given that I'm just doing this for seconds, I'm going to skip the welding jacket and all of that. So I'm going to fire up a generator. I'm going to turn on an arc. Okay, here comes power. The object here is to simply make a bead. That's an arc. That was a very small arc and a very small tip. I'm going to try again. Okay. I have a TIG welder. It's set up. I don't really yet know how to use it. I'll go figure that out. And the way I'm going to figure that out is take an old rack that I've had here in the garage for a long time and cut it apart into pieces and turn it into a welding table, a cart for the welder, and all of that. So that'll be what I'm up to next time. Till then, take care.